Joining us now to discuss, retired Army General David Petraeus. He, of course, was the commander of U.S. Central Command, led the 101st Airborne Division as well in the 2003 Iraq invasion. General, it's good to have you on this morning. As I've been watching this, and I'm sure you as well, watching this unfold, we are all impressed by Ukrainian resolve and some successes early on in the first week of this war. But, and I think we'll put the map up here, Russian forces are advancing, particularly in the south, more slowly in the east and the north, but they are getting into position to surround key cities. Without sounding pessimistic, really just wanting to be realistic, is Ukraine losing this war right now?
Well, they're losing some ground, Jim, but I don't think they're losing the war. In fact, I don't think that this is a war ultimately that Russia and Vladimir Putin can win. They can take a city perhaps, but they cannot hold it. Again, urban combat, as I mentioned last time I was with you, is incredibly soldier intensive. They just don't have the numbers. Beyond that, everyone in the entire country hates them, and most of the adults are willing to take action against them, whether it's to take up weapons or to be human shields, as we've seen in that one inspirational scene. You have a president who is providing Churchillian leadership. The people are undaunted, and the Ukrainian forces continue to exploit their home field advantage, support of the population, and the dramatic improvements that they've made since 2014. So what we're really going to see is the kind of continued activity around Kyiv, around Kharkiv, and so forth, where the Russian forces can't even bring their combat power to bear. I mean, they've literally created a traffic jam north of Kyiv. They can't get the forces off the road because the ground is very soft and soggy. Even tracked vehicles, not just wheeled vehicles, are having a tough time off-road. So again, they can't actually get their forces into combat, noting that, of course, a lot of that 40-mile convoy is also logistics vehicles as well. So they're in a real bind, and tragically, I think their frustration and just the willingness to use whatever it takes will lead them to do more of what we have seen in the last 48 hours, which is to launch missiles, rockets, artillery, cluster bombs, even these horrific thermobaric weapons that suck the oxygen out of an area and out of lungs indiscriminately, frankly. Increasingly, government facilities, infrastructure, try to turn off the lights. They'll starve the population of Kyiv if they have to, but that population, I don't think, is going to crack. You'll see millions, certainly, flow into Poland and other countries to the west. But I think those that stay are going to remain unbroken and undaunted. And so they can, again, temporarily use an area, particularly a small city or a village, but they can't hold it because urban combat in particular takes an awful lot of soldiers. So they're in a difficult position, I think. And we have seen in the past, as you know, Jim, they do not hesitate when they're confronted with this kind of situation to destroy a city like Aleppo in Syria or in Chechnya. And I feel they may do the same thing here. The difference here, frankly, is that the world is watching in a way that was not the case, again, in Syria or Grozny, where they could control and keep out the kind of coverage that you and your, frankly, quite heroic comrades are providing.
They can't control that message because so much of it, as you point out, General, is getting out. And yet they are doing exactly what you said. I mean, we see these attacks on civilian areas. We just heard from this incredibly brave woman who Jim interviewed. She is volunteering with the medical services. She talked about the attacks on her hometown. She talked about what she's seeing, direct attacks on civilians. So yes, the media has changed. Russia can't control the narrative in the same way, but that in no way seems to be a deterrent.
Well, at some point, what you have to start watching is what's happening in the cities of Russia, actually. When do the people actually really rise up? Noting, of course, that demonstrators know that they will be treated very harshly physically and perhaps detained and given a criminal record. But again, at a certain point, you're going to see some of that. You may also see Russian soldiers just start to refuse to continue to attack what really are their ethnic and often Russian-speaking brothers and sisters. There's a history of this, obviously. You know, Russia is either expanding or collapsing is their history. And you also saw in the Russo-Japanese War in 2005, and then, of of course, 1905, and then, of course, also in 1917, very famously, Russian forces essentially refused to support the regime at the time. That's what brought about the end of the Tsarist regime and brought in the communists, of course. So these are all, I think, factors that are issues that we should watch and track. That could be what will finally perhaps lead President Putin to at least be willing to consider some way out of this. And then I think you have to persuade someone like former Chancellor Merkel to come out of retirement. She's had a few weeks off now, should be rested, ready to go, and to provide her with something that is somewhat reasonable. Because what we do not want to do is force someone who is in the state of mind that we see with Vladimir Putin into a corner with nothing to lose. That's where everyone loses.
General David Petraeus, always appreciate your insight. Thank you.